there's been a lot of talk about continuous integration testing, which is obviously like a really awesome way to use Selenium and any other testing framework. But one big problem like our company faces, mine specifically, is we deal mainly with API integration. So a lot of the code we test has nothing to do with our code. And I'm wondering, is there terminology for that? Is there like design patterns or practices for handling that type of thing that is different than how you would handle, like for instance, you mentioned like maintaining your test results in CouchDB for your continuous integration testing. But this is something that like runs outside of that realm. I feel almost like a lot of the testing I do runs like on a cron job. It runs because it has to, because our code can be perfect and something could break that's completely out of our control. Are you familiar with that type of?
We have the same issue. So our systems have to integrate with a lot of legacy systems. And the way we deal with it is we write simulators that try to simulate what the other party may do to us, right? And this is again where kind of high volume, exploratory, high input testing approaches will work, because those guys may be evil. They'll do something that our developers didn't anticipate, and so that's what we're trying to do, is to really stress out our code under all kinds of possible conditions that we don't necessarily think of because developers, when they code, they need to think positive thoughts and actually move the product forward. As testers, we need to do a lot of evil, stress out the system and find those nooks and crannies and make the code more robust to handle that.
Hey, I'd be happy to talk to you about this more in detail later, but I just wanted to give a super snapshot perception from somebody with a background in large enterprise QA across many platforms. Very different environment from web testing, obviously. There's a lot of traditional QA architect type thinking that you seem to be describing, you seem to be looking for in a place that's not really that different. And it just strikes me that in your story of automated testing, you're talking about something that I think is wonderful and believe in and am involved in. But you point out that you lost a lot of QA people in that process. And it strikes me that maybe at some point we have to make sure that we do not lose the various different approaches to testing, the out-of-the-box thinking that defined the senior QA people of the past. Because I feel like some of the people that mentored me over the past 11 years or so would just be hearing these questions from you and saying, oh, you're talking about Blue Moon testing, you're talking about this and that, stuff that they've done. So just a quick comment, be happy to follow up with you later.
As always with new shiny things, people took it to its ultimate end. I can talk offline a little bit maybe about my previous experience. I spent a couple of years at Google on a very large project, and again, huge amount of testing, parallelized, et cetera, and a lot of interesting issues with that. And you need to have the full complement of tools at your disposal. Yeah, so I totally, tools and techniques and the right kind of people. I totally agree. Yeah, so if you hire somebody who's really kind of a junior developer into a tester role, huge mistake, because they don't have testing skills. They may actually not even be a good tester or be interested in testing. They just have some development skills, and so you hire them to write, like you were describing this outsourced effort to write these Selenium tests, et cetera. But they're basically writing what are called categorization tests, because they pretty much write a test that it's a regression test on existing functionality, but they don't really test it and do testing. So yeah, so it's a huge issue. Yeah.
Exploratory is for, especially if you're talking about insurance. I used to work in a company where the large vertical is financial and very large government sector customer pool as well. You have to have exploratory testing if you don't understand it.
Right. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that we're gonna not do the traditional exploratory testing, which is usually done manually. This is yet another tool called automated exploratory testing that can catch certain kinds of bugs. But the traditional exploratory tester role is not going away anytime soon, I predict. Until singularity, until we get artificial intelligence, and then yes, it's all going to be good.
exploratory by means you wanted to explore based on any build which is given to you. If you're automating, what is the value? You are going to reuse it, or I mean, are you going to take more time in writing that test for exploratory purposes, or are you going to do the exploratory on every build?
Tests and designs tests at the same time, right? Like a real live smart human being testing, right? Here, the reason we're calling it exploratory is because we're going to use some heuristics, maybe some randomness, maybe some other interesting ways to generate input that tries to do something the human being probably will also do as part of the exploratory session, but do it a lot faster. But this is not a substitute for, again, a human being just basically testing the system because they understand the business goals of the system and because they're just a good tester because they've been practicing.
Don't you see that as become a standard test if you start running like after 4 or 5 iterations?
I'm not sure what you mean by standard test. But
Because
I see it as part of our toolkit, but I'm not sure what you mean by standard test.
I mean, basically you're defining a test case which considers what do you say, non-conventional data. What kind of thing?
Right. So yeah, I mean, my vision is that you have kind of a test case template, and then you have the computer system parameterize it, change it, mutate it, evolve it. So out of like a template, I may get 1,000 different test runs with different data, different steps even, right? I mean, you can have all kinds of mutations within, reaching a certain goal, within the use case, right? I may have some optional steps, I may have some loops that I repeat some things more or less, just really do a lot of different permutations. That's what I'm talking about. So as a tester, I would do some of that stuff manually. Just as a good tester, I would do that. Some of it, I think we can automate. We can do some of it. Some of it, we can't.
Okay.
So anyway, that's kind of where I'm going. All right.
Very good.
Thank you.